Freedom Now movement, hear me. We are requesting all citizens to move into Washington, to go by plane, by car, bus, any way that you can get there. Walk if necessary. We are pushing for jobs, housing, desegregated schools. This is an urgent request. Please join.
The American Broadcasting Company continues its coverage of the March on Washington.
It's impossible to get a precise estimate of the crowd here, but it's certainly well over 25,000 now and swelling fast.
To congratulate all of you on the orderly, dignified manner in which you executed the march from the Washington Memorial. You have already told the world what we are here for and shown them by your courage, determination, and your order that we mean business.
Yes, we mean business.
Excellent, excellent.
Welcome to the State College commemoration of the 57th March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. My name is Leslie Lang, and I'm excited to be co-hosting this event with Terry Watson, the founder for Strategies for Justice.
Yes, Leslie, this is a great pleasure to be able to host this event with our partners at the State College Borough and the Mlk Plaza Planning Committee.
Yes, Terry. Today, our overall vision for this event is to reflect the purposes and parallel movements of the original 1963 March. We have a variety of speakers from the Penn State community, talented musicians, and spoken word creatives that will help us express the past and present urgency of the movement.
Absolutely. Now, typically we would actually have this march at the Mlk Plaza in downtown State College, but we are observing our social distancing and still, keeping an eye on that pandemic. But our bold and brave are in Washington, D.C. from 8 to 3 today. And this is a really, really exciting day. Absolutely.
It's true. It's an amazing day all over the country. There are a lot of marches out there, Terry. So as we reflect on this historic occasion that transformed our nation, we will remember that it has always been an intergenerational and multi-ethnic day of action.
Absolutely.
I think our protests that still continue today in the same vein. And so, as it's our tradition, whenever we gather for the NAACP, we begin with the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. And this year, we chose a performance piece by the Alvin Ailey Dance Theater.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory. Let us march on till victory. Let us march on till victory. Here's a wine.
Reverend.
That
And so we honor him with a prayer. And next, we have Pastor Harold Mackenzie from Unity Church of Jesus Christ and Pastor Dan Nold from Calvary Baptist Church.
Hello, my name is Harold Mackenzie. I am the senior pastor of Unity Church of Jesus Christ and want to welcome you here today as we remember on this occasion 57 years since the March on Washington, a great march of faith for racial justice and reconciliation.
And I'm Dan. I'm the lead pastor at Calvary Church, and I'm so grateful to be able to have a small part in addressing Central PA, whoever's listening to this remembrance, a celebration, but also this opportunity just to be influenced and impacted again by what took place all those years ago. So we're going to open in prayer.
Heavenly Father, you are all powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And we come to you today, not just to remember in great respect and honor a great step of faith by the thousands of people there on August 28th, 1963, but also the great faith of Dr. King as he led this occasion. And remembering forward the faith that we need today as we still address the issues of systemic racism in our country. We pray that as we share this occasion together today, that our hearts would be lifted in faith, that our hearts would be lifted in courage to remember what you are able to do with simple people just like us, who will refuse to let hate, bigotry, and bias rule our lives and our nation. So we come to you today with our hearts focused as we remember backwards, looking forward.
And Father, I just pray that you will pour out hope upon people. God, we're living through difficult times, a difficult season, and my brothers and sisters of color have walked through it far longer in so many deeper ways than I have. But God, I pray for hope. I pray that lamenting plus hope would lead us to travail for a better time, for racial reconciliation, racial righteousness. God, I pray that for everybody listening to this, that you'd give hope that their efforts are not in vain, that their prayers are not in vain, that step by step, little by little, maybe some large steps, God, would you please pour out upon us your hope. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 Amen. Amen. Wow. So we got to start this off with our mayor from State College, Mayor Filippelli, who issued a proclamation actually for the March on Washington, and he's going to share a few words with us. And following him is going to be our borough manager as well, Tom Fontaine. So let me bring them in
Great.
as well.
Hello to everyone virtually joining us today for this commemoration. 57 years ago, on August 28, 1963, the March on Washington took place. The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, and 250,000 people marched in Washington. This was the event that marked by Martin Luther King's historic I Have a Dream speech. First, I want to thank Gary Abdullah, the borough's Martin Luther King Jr. Plaza Committee, and all those involved for ensuring that this event is taking place this year. This commemoration is critical to continuing the dialogues around social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion. As mayor, I have the honor of speaking at events like this and would like to take this opportunity to ask that everyone continue to speak out and to take action to make our community one that is accepting, tolerant, inclusive, and just for all persons, regardless of their race or religion, or their color, or their sexual orientation, or their gender, or their mental or physical disability. Let's all help ensure that Dr. King's legacy continues to live on in State College and around the world. Thank you for viewing this and participating in this commemoration, and please continue to strengthen our democracy.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a pleasure to hear from the mayor. I think next, Terry, you have Tom Fontaine, our borough manager.
Hello, I'm Tom Fontaine, the borough manager at the Borough of State College. On August 28, 1963, 250,000 people joined together on the Mall in front of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. for the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. We are here today in State College to celebrate the 57th anniversary of the march as we continue to face racism in our nation. I am honored to be part of this celebration, and I want to welcome everyone to this virtual event. Normally, we would be at the Martin Luther King Jr. Plaza on Fraser Street to celebrate and remember the march. In fact, 3 years ago today, on August 28, 2017, we all gathered at the Mlk Plaza to celebrate the march and to dedicate the plaza. As is the case with most things these days, we must adapt due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Thus, we are celebrating this important anniversary virtually. 57 years after the March on Washington, we find ourselves still struggling with the important issues of social justice, race, and equity. There is so much work that still must be done. At the Borough of State College, we are committed to addressing social justice issues both in government and in our community. The borough is engaged in ongoing work to advance racial equity and to address systemic and institutional racism. We are committed to ensuring that State College is a welcoming and engaged place for all persons, and that diversity, inclusion, and equity are pillars of the State College community. This work is critical for our community and for our nation. The March on Washington is perhaps best known for the I Have a Dream speech delivered by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Others today will talk about Dr. King's speech and his legacy. This historic occasion also included so many other leaders from the civil rights movement of the early 1960s in this country, including members of our own community. Among those that helped to organize the March on Washington was John Lewis of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. As we continue to fight for social justice and racial equity, let me leave you with John Lewis's words. When you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have to speak up. You have to say something. You have to do something. Thank you to everyone that's participating in today's celebration of the 57th anniversary of the March on Washington. It takes a whole community to ensure that State College is welcoming to everyone.
Why, yes, it does. It takes an entire community.
Indeed, it does. And thank you, Tom Fontaine, for those words.
Next, I think we want to be inclusive, and so we have Penn State's president, Eric Barron, who also has personal reflections and memories to share of being part of the MLK and civil rights movements. And he's going to share with us the importance of fighting ignorance and overcoming hostility to take action. President Barron.
I'm Eric Barron, president of Penn State. I'm honored to be a part of this historic occasion. Today's event commemorates the pivotal 1963 March on Washington for freedom and jobs. I was a teenager at the time, and Dr. King was one of my personal heroes. I remember the power of his words when he spoke. And on that day, he told nearly 250,000 people that he had a dream. His dream was very different from the world I lived in, and frankly, the world we live in today. Over the last few years, we've seen the emergence and normalizing of hate speech. We've seen a growing sense of vulnerability of individuals based on how they look, how they worship, and who they love. And if the open sense of hostility to different viewpoints and populations isn't enough, there are those who seek to intentionally compound tensions and promote open conflict through social media and deliberately provoked clashes. At Penn State, we have worked to make progress on the issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion, but it's very clear we still have a long way to go. So this summer, we made a commitment to fight ignorance and intolerance, modeling inclusivity and embracing the power that diversity represents. Our goal is to work together to address both immediate issues and the solutions to long-standing problems. We've started by outlining a dozen actionable steps that affect the entire institution, from the Board of Trustees to students to faculty and staff. I have also charged our task force on policing in communities of color to explicitly examine all procedures and practices related to bias and to policies related to the use of force, including those that result from our partnerships across the Commonwealth. And I established a select Penn State Presidential Commission on Bias and Community Safety to make specific recommendations on ensuring the safety of our community, especially in a context of the expected political and social unrest that we are facing. I remember walking and singing in the funeral procession of Dr. King that began at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. We walked in rows, many times holding hands, spanning the entire width of the street for miles. Behind us, someone would raise their voice in song, "We shall overcome," and everyone would start singing. But what was amazing was that when the song was over, you could hear the song end farther and farther into the distance, like a train receding as it gets farther and farther away. Dr. King's "I Have a Dream" speech is iconic. It's taught in schools, memorized by students, and has been selected as one of the best speeches in history. But it hasn't been fully realized. We need to continue to march until it is. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
That was very good and very powerful. I'm always glad to hear from President Barron and his experience in the civil rights as a kid. And I think it really does, our youth motivates us and inspires us. So I think that's great.
I
And
was
go
really
ahead.
moved by that
Sorry.
too. But yes, I'm sorry. Go on, Leslie. Go ahead.
I was just going to talk about, we're talking about the community and talking about the village. I'm just going to
We
give
are.
a shout out to all the students who are watching us live at the Paul Robeson Cultural Center right now. So shout out to Carlos, the director, and Andre, who's there with all of our students. And I
Yes,
hope they
indeed.
enjoy the rest of the show. And right now, I think, Terry, we're going to go live to the studio for some local talent. We have Gabriel Greene. He is a poet, a musician, and a scholar. He is from Michigan. He currently resides in State College, and he is pursuing a dual title PhD at Penn State, studying English and African American and Diaspora Studies. His work has always and already been featured in Was Good, The Amistad, and The Peregrine. Yeah, the magical Negro reveals his secret. His first chapbook was winner of the CR Press 2019 Winter Soup Bowl competition. So here's Gabe performing Ours is the Fury.
Well, take it away, Gabe.
Thank you. Son, I know you mad. I know what it means to have a fire trapped within your pupils. Embers that singe through corneas, burning a trail to your brain, through your nervous system, creating a dry forest of your limbs. The spark of steel and the wind of another body hitting the ground, threatening to set your body ablaze. I know what rage looks like. I've seen it before. Back in '92, when they beat a man half to death on camera and called it a Wednesday, I felt a barrel of wildfire explode in my chest. How else do you explain the feeling of being told whether or not your body is compliant? If it is breathing, it is a danger that must be cut at its source. I never wanted so badly to kill with my bare hands, but in those hands was a note from your mother. We needed eggs, milk, and meat, and you needed a father to teach you to cook one day. Besides, I'd known what rage looked like. I'd seen it before. Back in '68, when they killed a king's cries for justice, and I watched flames engulf a city one block at a time. My mother and I watched on our front porch as a dream became deferred and dried under a summer sun, and the winds shouted a sorrowful cry of vengeance, and friction from the limbs of leftover marches sparked a raging fire in the street. We watched it burn. No tears. Besides, we'd seen this before. Son, I've lived through enough fires, brushed off years of ashes to know ain't but two ways to exist here. Live long enough to warn your sons of the fire they inherited and how to live with it, or let the fire consume you, scorch the earth, and hope the flames burn it all to dust.
And
Wow,
that
that
which
was
cannot
powerful.
be used will be consumed. And
That
we'll
was
get Gabe back
powerful.
a little later. Who do you have for
Yes,
us
we will.
next?
Well, I am so excited to talk about this next brother. Also did in my heart, Eric Farmer. So Eric was born in State College, and he was actually raised in North Carolina. He returned and is a proud Penn State alum, sharing his songs, his relationships, his social awareness, everything, his love with us. And he is also performing the song Not Only in Ferguson. So I'm going to bring that up
All right
so
now.
we can hear it.
How would you feel if they killed a man you held in your heart? 'Cause he held in his hands part of your dreams, while someone said to you, this is justified. And maybe your confusion ferments into anger, 'cause you don't believe, no. This is justified. How many children have to die? How many children have to die? To open our eyes, to open our eyes, country, down in the cities, up on the reservations, have to hear these words. This is justified. How many children have to die? How many children have to die? To open our eyes, to open our eyes.
Fantastic.
Wow,
I
that
love to
is
hear Eric.
yes, Eric.
We've seen
That's
Eric at
beautiful, man.
Arts Fest in the past. He gets around town always. I am always glad to hear him.
Yes.
And I'm equally as excited to have our special guest, Eric's mother, our beloved Dr. Barbara Farmer, formerly served as the Director for Multicultural Affairs in the College of Information Sciences and Technology at Penn State University. And she's also retired and served as our principal of Houserville and Lamont Elementary Schools in the State College Area School District. And she was the first African-American principal for the district. And Barbara also has the privilege and the pleasure of being an actual 1963 attendee on the March on Washington. Let's welcome Barbara for her reflections of that historic day. Hi, Barbara.
Hello, how are you?
Well, good to see you.
It's good to be here on such a wonderful day of remembrance and celebration. And I thank you for including me in this. You know, when I think about the first event in 1963, what hits me is a feeling of awe and possibility. I went to that march with my Sunday school class from my church, far away from home, from my mom and dad, because I was raised by tenant farmers. My parents were tenant farmers in South Carolina. And you didn't get far away from them because they had to make sure they kept us safe from the environment in which we lived. So I was really, I was on pins and needles because they weren't around. But at the same time, as I sat there and listened to the speakers and saw all of those people in the same place with the same goal, with the similar feelings, I was just in awe. So, and then as I sat there in awe, through the years, what I've realized too is I had a sense of possibility put in me that day and installed in me that day of what I might be and what I might become. My parents were also strong advocates of education, particularly for us girls. I had a sister. And I went to Hampton, and that experience sort of deepened because we had all kinds of social activism on campus. We had we had Stokely Carmichael. We had all kinds of people visiting our campus to instill even more deeply in us what our role was and what we could do and become. So through the years, though, as I reflect back on it, I realized that awe and possibility turned into action and responsibility. That I had to take my place in the midst of the struggle and what was going on. So when I think about the jobs I've had, and the surprising part is many of the jobs I've had, people have called me to come and be a part of them. But when I think about it, I was in my raising, I was raised to believe there was a way to do and say anything. My mother was a champion of that. So through the years in the jobs that I had, I was a public school teacher. And in those settings, always called on to help settle something between the faculty members, because what I discovered was I was always a person to integrate school settings. I was one of maybe 10 or 15 to integrate a high school in Hampton, Virginia, where the principal didn't even know I was a teacher because he was a white male and he didn't know who he'd hired. to Raleigh, North Carolina, where I was in the Wake County public school system and helping to integrate and increase the number of African-American teachers at that school, and then coming to State College to the school district. And that was quite an interesting event, because I started out in State College being a stay-at-home mom with a daughter in the 11th grade. And something happened foolishly at the high school, and I was called in to be a mediator and to work with parents and the students involved. And out of that, I was offered the job as principal of Howesville Lamont Elementary Schools. So throughout my tenure in education, it's always been sending me someplace to make a difference with the adults and the children. When I was an assistant principal in Wake County, North Carolina, I was called one day by the assistant superintendent to be sent to another brand new elementary school in town because they had displaced the principal and assistant principal. And when I got to that school, we were supposed to calm down the community, because the students coming to that school were Black students from the projects downtown. And there was only one Black teacher in the building, and then me. And I thought, here we go again. But that has been my role in terms of diversity presence and diversity presentation, and getting people to realize that different is not deficient. You know, we're all born the same way, loved by parents, and hopefully when we die, somebody will be at the gravesite who loves us. So when we talk about that march on Washington, and still even today, when I think about it, it just goes so deep inside of me, because that one-time event created a lifetime of dedication and responsibility. So I've done diversity training. I'm a trainer for diversity. I was the teacher recruiter for the state of North Carolina, trying to recruit Black high school students into becoming teachers. I was a TV host for the WPSU show What Matters, and that was an issue on social justice and diverse issues. So I've been kind of busy. And then the job I had in the school district was wonderful. I loved being principal. And you know what I discovered even more deeply? Those babies didn't care that I was Black. My students would come run up to me and ask for a hug. And they loved me because I loved them. And there were times when I was hugging them, the parent would walk up to me and say, I need a hug too. So I would hug them.
Giving out hugs.
Yeah, because I knew that some of my students entered the building and had not had any skin connection with anybody at home. I could tell by the way they were dressed. I could tell by their shyness or their openness, the kinds of treatment they got at home. So when they entered the building, I believed in my teachers as well, that we were their safe haven. We were supposed to supply them with love, affection, attention, and take care of their needs if we needed to, so that they would have a positive experience in their lives. Because I've always believed that white children need Black administrators as badly as Black children need Black administrators, because they need to know what life is like. So this journey from the March on Washington, and then today, the celebration of all these years, I just praise God to still be here to even experience the march today virtually on TV, and for what is happening in State College Borough. As chairperson of the Martin Luther King Plaza Committee and being on the borough's diversity committee, I am just pleased and thrilled with the borough's commitment to diversity and taking steps and funding the steps financially to make a difference in this community. I'll tell you a secret. Whenever I see the town manager, I tell him we're going to be the model city for diversity.
Okay.
We're going to be the model city for diversity, because we are making strides in that direction. And whenever, Leslie, whenever I have a chance, I like for people to understand just how deeply important that is and that they need to be a part of it. My recent theme, I think, with the Washington experience, and again here today, is what happens when you walk into the room.
Yes.
And to me, that's a major part of what we're trying to get people to acknowledge and see their role and their part in making a difference in what we're trying to achieve here in State College and in the borough and all of that. So it's been an interesting ride. I've been blessed to have a wonderful husband of 52 years who supports me and is right there with me all the time. I have Eric as a son and Rebecca here, two of my three children, and the third one in North Carolina. And they've been supporting and loving and helping me learn so many things through the years about diversity and about taking care of the hearts and minds of people. As I said in a previous setting, when we had that awful situation in State College with Osage, I said we have to deal with the heartbeat of hope. So that's a part too of what you see today when we look at TV and look at the March on Washington. We're walking knee deep in hope right now and hoping that people will see that, yes, today is another march, but we march every day in our hearts and our minds
every day,
attempting to make a difference in what happens in this community in which we live and thrive and love. So that's my journey.
Wow. Thank you for
Thank you, Barbara, for sharing your journey.
Absolutely.
It's very inspiring, even all these years that you walk through from 1963 when you had a seed of hope and you got prepared by a church group to attend that march. And and you would never have known that the harvest would have been so rich with you living a life filled with diversity.
No, because my parents were very sure to keep me safe, keep their children safe. And we lived in a segregated society. And the only white person in my life for years was the lady that my mama ironed clothes for, who would bring them to our house. That was the white lady, the white person we knew. And my father worked 2 full-time jobs so that my mother would be able to stay home and take care of us and keep us safe. And so that he could provide everything that we needed in order to sustain ourselves as a family. So between the Black segregated public schools, Hampton University, North Carolina A&T State University, I have been in a bubble of love and support and being excited about being Black in America.
Thank you, Barbara, for sharing that with us. We hope that it serves as inspiration to our young people who are out there listening now, that these wonderful retired mentors and people in your school district are really struggling to make the change, to become more inclusive, to do recruitment and hiring needs and retention needs. All of these things are in our community right now. And so we thank you for playing an integral part of it now. Thanks, Barbara.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I appreciate the work that you all are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Wow, we gotta. I love listening to folks who's been through that journey and passing on that knowledge. And we have a couple of people lined up today that's going to give some reflections from the actual march. So I'm really looking forward to those interviews.
They're really important milestones when we think about the importance of a dream, the importance of a march, the importance of making your life a life filled with change, despite the adversities, despite what you think you can come from, sharecroppers or otherwise. And when you have children to nurture them and to make sure that you inspire them and fill them with hope so that they too can make a difference every day. So I think that was great. And I have another inspiring church member and wonderful sister and wonderful resident. And where would we be as a Black community without our soulful music? So next, let's welcome Terry Parker. She is the Penn State Director of Administrative and Financial Services for the Office of Physical Plant, and she's going to sing Still I Rise.
But I'm not broken, wounded, but time will heal. Heavy the load, the cross I bear, lonely the road I trod, I dare, shaken, but here I stand, weary, in the sky, yet still I rise, never to give up, never to give in against all odds, yet still I rise high above the clouds. At times I feel low, yet still I rise. Sometimes I'm troubled, but not in despair. Struggling, I make my way through. Trials, they come to make me strong. I must endure, I must hold on, yet still I rise, never to give up, never to give in against all odds, yet still I rise high above the clouds. At times I feel low, yet still I rise above all my problems, above all my eyes can see. Knowing God is able to strengthen me, to strengthen me, yet still I rise, never to give up, oh, never to give in against all odds, yet still I rise high above the clouds. At times I feel low, yet still I need to know which way to go, yet still I hold. At times I feel low, yet still I rise, yet still I rise.
Oh my goodness. I've got the goosebumps. My gosh.
I always love to hear Terry sing, and that particular song stirs my heart and my soul, and it reminds us that no matter what's going on, no matter how we feel defeated, and still I rise. So I think that's really important for our community today, because in the midst of a pandemic, several of them, racial injustice, and the things that we're still battling against, It's the spirit of John Lewis that we're celebrating today, along with Dr. King. And we have to remember, we endure, we persist, and we will rise. And so in our community, we have so many other networks and efforts going on. And we have had many networks and churches that have embarked on the journey of social justice over the years. And we are no exception in State College. Pastor Mac and Pastor Dan have been leading the charge locally, and they have partnered to address the issues of racial injustice and launch these discussions in the church, which we have not traditionally been bold enough to do. So these critical conversations, these deep, meaningful connectedness to Christ's vision for his gospel community and what that kingdom really should be walking out in the name of Christianity. So as founding members of the Racial Unity Network, RUN, we launched this between two congregations. So the Unity Church of Jesus Christ and the Calvary Baptist Church have been walking this out together for the past 2.5 years. And let's see what Pastor Mac and Pastor Dan have to share about that initiative.
Well, welcome back, Pastor Mac and Pastor Dan.
Many of you know me in my capacity as co-chair of CCU with Tom King. Today I'm coming with a different hat. Dan and I are coming with a different hat on. We are coming representing as the part of the leadership team of the Racial Unity Network, a Christ-centered group that is concerned about racial justice and racial reconciliation from a Christ-centered perspective, starting with the Christians at the Christian church, and then working from there out to our community. And so we want to share, because of Dr. King's strong foundation of faith in Jesus Christ, we want to share from that perspective today.
Well, it is a privilege to be able to be here with you today, Harold, and Central PA. I'm grateful to have a part in remembering the March on DC for Jobs and Freedom. Dr. Martin Luther King died at the age of 39, and as someone who is passionate about making an impact on the world, King is one of my heroes, because making an impact is less about longevity and it's more about legacy. It's about being part of something that's bigger than you are. You know, he had just been stabbed by a fanatic with a letter opener as he was coming out of a bookstore, and the letter opener came within inches of his heart. And he was interviewed while in the hospital, and a reporter said, "Doctor, if you stay on this path, you're going to be killed. Don't you want to live a long life?" And Dr. King said, I'd like to live a long life. Longevity is much to be desired, but I must do the will of God for my life. It's not God protect me, it's God use me. God use me. It's not about length of days, it's about length of influence. And so God continues to use Dr. Martin Luther King. That's why we're here, not just to remember, not just to celebrate, but to be influenced, to be impacted, to be a part of his legacy. King was born in 1929, 91 years ago. In 1929, the eyes of America were on the economics of the day. The stock market crash brought worldwide economic hardship. A flu epidemic, does this sound familiar? Killed 200,000 people worldwide. And it wasn't nearly as tragic as the epidemic of a decade earlier when 75 million people had died, but it had everybody wondering if it was happening again. Those days saw the first around the world flights, the discovery of penicillin, and all eyes were on the great events of the day. Nobody thought about the babies. While all those great events were taking place, babies were being born. Anne Frank, Fred Rogers, Earl Lloyd, who would become the first African-American in the NBA, Maya Angelou, Fats Domino, and Martin Luther King Jr. All eyes were on the great events of the day. And yet think about the ripple effect of his birth and the births of so many others. Which of those great events of 1929 mattered more than the babies born in those days? I was 1 year and 10 days old when Martin Luther King marched on DC and gave his speech, "I Have a Dream." My granddaughter, Maisie, was born on the day that George Floyd was killed. We tend to imagine that God manages his world through all the great events when really I'm reminded that his plans often begin with a baby. when a poem needs to be written, when a song needs to be sung, or an example needs to be set, when some people need justice and others need to be reminded that silence is in itself injustice, God's plan begins with a baby. And so I'm praying for the babies, for the children, for the next generation. I'm asking God to give us courage and to forgive us for times of silence when we've been called to words and actions. I'm praying that our words and our actions in the years to come would be filled with justice and mercy and hope and love, and that our words and actions would be an example to our children and our grandchildren, and that God would raise up a new generation of women and men who, in King's words, would rededicate ourselves to the long and bitter but beautiful struggle for a new world. I'm so grateful for the example and the inspiration that we've gained through Martin Luther King, and it's a privilege to just be a small part of this day.
I'm reminded of the great step of faith that it took for Dr. King and the many thousands to have that march. At times when marches had ended bloody and brutality had taken the day, he had determined in his faith in Christ to move forward with something that had been totally unprecedented at that time, to call the conscience of our nation to the fact that all men were not treated equal, that all women were not looked at the same based on the color of their skin, and understanding in faith that according to the words of Christ, that he had come to tear down the walls of division in Ephesians chapter 2, verses 14, moving forward, talking about him moving and tearing down the walls of division. And that Jesus came in Revelations 5:9 so that every man from every nation might know love and freedom and justice and salvation. And he stood on those steps, and the men and women there stood boldly in a faith that said there can be a different day. And we are challenged today in that same way to say it can be different. And even as Dr. King said, that even as we look for this cup of freedom, we do not let hatred bring us down, or we do not let just bitterness take over our hearts. And this was a message impassioned that so speaks to our hearts today, but speaks to our hearts, as Dr. King proclaimed, of a God that is able to move in the natural things in a supernatural way. And so we are remembering his faith in Christ that caused him to stand boldly against injustice, stand boldly and declare and call forth that righteousness would run down like a mighty stream. And we, as we face the ongoing issues of systemic racism in our culture today, are again being called to stand and say that there is a righteous God in Christ Jesus who is calling on the church. Remembering even Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail, he wrote that letter to the church, the whole church, not just the Black church, that we would all stand together, but we would be moving forward into our community, sharing his message of love. The legacy of Dr. King, the legacy of the March on Washington, is a legacy to the commitment to see change happen, not just then, but so readily and real today. And we pray that in the name of Jesus Christ, in our generation, we would see a change that brings closer the reality of Dr. King's faith and his dream of a beloved community anchored in the teachings of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It's been an honor to share with you, but I pray also that your commitment today is deepened and that your look toward faith is enriched as we see the foundation of Christ in Dr. King's life. God bless you.
That was a good exhortation, and it says to rededicate ourselves to the dream and to pray for each generation to be filled with justice and love and to deepen our commitment to walk it out together.
Absolutely. And I love the idea to see Pastor Mac and Pastor Dan have that conversation, because that's a really important conversation to be having today, especially in our churches. Well,
they were long ahead of the crew. They started their
yes.
brotherhood and their bromance a long time ago, and they are now inspiring a whole city church, 16 other churches, to come on this wonderful race and reconciliation journey with us. So this is exciting. And as we hit the top of the hour, we welcome those again to the 57th March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. And this is our State College commemoration. And part 2, freedom isn't free.
Well, I think we should introduce. My name again is Terry Watson, and I am here with my lovely co-host Leslie Lang, and we've been here for about an hour, and we got 2 more to go. So we're gonna start this session off with a message from our Penn State Vice Provost for Educational Equity, Marcus Whitehurst, who's going to remind us to participate by realizing the iconic dream. He also going to talk about a program that's happening on September 8th. So with that. Dr. Marcus Whitehurst.
Marcus Whitehurst, Vice Provost for Educational Equity at Penn State. As we celebrate the 57th anniversary of the original March on Washington, which took place in 1963 for the purposes of civil and economic rights for African Americans, it's important to recognize that much has changed, but much remains the same. And while Dr. King delivered his historic I Have a Dream speech at the march, we must remember to remain awake through the current great revolution for racial equity. And on September 8th, 2020 at 6 p.m., we will live stream our second virtual roundtable discussion on Toward Racial Equity at Penn State, Social Difference, Social Equity, and Social Change. This roundtable is meant to be timely, but it's also meant to remind us of the observation that Dr. King made years after the March on Washington. Dr. King spoke about the arc of a moral universe, which is long, but it bends towards justice, which means that, similar to what Abraham Lincoln once said, we have to continue a march toward a more perfect union. And that's why these events are so necessary, in order for us to focus on that positive and impactful change that we want to see. Thank you so much, and enjoy the virtual March on Washington.
Wonderful.
It was. Hey, Terry, I think we should share with our viewers just how we managed to engage the younger generation, right? We engaged the high school students to speak their piece about the tragic officer shooting of Osaze Osage in State College on March 20th, 2019, and how it impacted them.
Yes, and I'm very excited about this next piece because, one question that I asked our youth is to answer one question: what is justice? We hear
What
this a lot.
is justice?
What is justice? And the thing about it is, we do hear a lot from us older folks, and I mean, we do a lot of talking, but sometimes we must do some listening as well. So I was so excited to see the submissions from our youth. I want to take this time to thank the judges who took the time to read their submissions and provide their feedback. And I'm so honored to share with you our winner of the 2020 What is Justice Youth Competition, Alexandra Haskins. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Alexandria Haskins, I believe that's correct.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Well, with that said, let's listen to her piece on what is justice.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The pledge, a promise, a protocol, a guarantee of safety instead of a felonious police call towards an innocent Black individual who was not wronged at all. Justice, the principle that people receive that which they deserve. What do Osazi, Brianna, or Elijah deserve? 3 cases of many in which the abominable officers who took their lives were able to swerve away from the full penalty of law. Petition, a formal written request, typically one signed by many people, appealing to authority with respect to a particular cause. One click, one signature can change all. Will the innocent Black lives receive justice? Will both the innocents and the preposterous officers get what they deserve? Will you, your voice, your actions, your signature, allow them to?
All right. Well, I'd like to thank you for submitting
That's right.
that.
Will we get justice? Will we
Well,
see justice served? We
you know
have to
what?
break down the walls of anonymity.
It is amazing that our youth, I'm proud of them, this generation, you know, because we are seeing them in action. We're seeing them protest. We're seeing them use their First Amendment right to do what they believe is right and what is just. So
Yes, we are
I
proud
re-
of them, and our students stood up and held their own rally.
they did, and I was, you know, I thought it was beautifully done. Everyone wore masks, they social distance.
They did,
But
and they presented their 10 demands to the school board district.
yes, indeed, yes, indeed.
So we can be
Or
proud that it continues.
it
I think
indeed we can.
next we have also representation now. We had high school, and now we have college. At Penn State's University campus, we have an annual Mlk Commemoration Committee. This year's chair, Michaela, has a word to share.
Hello, my name is Michaela Ash. I'm the Executive Director of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Commemoration Student Committee. Our organization puts on a week-long commemoration in January, as well as events throughout the fall and spring semester which focus on a central theme chosen annually in the interest of remembering Dr. King's life and legacy. A key part of this legacy is not just the nonviolence that is often remembered and distorted as passivity, but also Dr. King's understanding of urgency and persistence. It's incredibly important in these times that students remember the power that we wield and that we use the momentum that has been cultivated as a result of the recent Black Lives Matter protests to continue to pursue racial justice and reconciliation, both in our communities at Penn State and in our hometowns. For generations, young people have served as catalysts for change across the globe. SNCC, during the Civil Rights Movement, is a perfect example of this. College students have tremendous power when we mobilize, and through our organized efforts, we have the capability to foster social change. It's important, even in these unusual times, given the global pandemic, to be persistent and to remember the power that we have had historically and the power that we can continue to harness. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michaela, for reminding us that we have power and we should use our agency and we should foster social change. I think we have another change agent. We heard from him once before. I have seen him with his fist raised. I have had the pleasure of standing up with him once again. Do we have another selection by Gabe Greene live in the studio? I think you're muted, Terry.
Sorry about that, brother Gabe. Take it away.
This next one is a shorter one, and then I have, if there's time, I have another one. But this is a short one. This uses a form called Circle of Fifths, which I was working with my advisor, Dr. Keith Gilliard, and it's a form that he invented. And I wanted to. It's a circular form based off of the musical theory of the same name. But it goes. The title of it is "And the Cycle Continues." We doomed to face death by fear. Death by fear, we doomed to own. Doomed to own death by fear state. By fear, state doomed to own blame. To own blame by fear, state dreams. Fear state dreams to own blame free. Own blame free fear, state dreams face. State dreams face own blame free we. Blame free we, state dreams face death. Dreams face death, blame free we doomed. Free we doomed, dreams face death by free we doomed to. We doomed to face death by fear. And the last poem that I want to read is an erasure poem taken from, fragments of Donald Trump's inaugural address. The title of it is a love poem, but as I read the words, before and then continue to read the words and think in context of the many different movements that is going on, knowing we have a divider in chief and knowing that his words are oftentimes used to divide us, I wondered what would it look like to have his words say something beautiful, to have his words say something that can serve almost as a rallying cry to those of us fighting in the struggle. And so, again, this is a love poem, which is a fragment from Donald Trump's inaugural address. Thank you. We are now joined in a promise together for years to come. We will face challenges. We will confront hardships, but we will get the job done. We gather power, and we are magnificent. Today has very special meaning. Today, I am giving to you the reaped rewards of triumph. Celebrate right here and right now, this moment. I belong to you. What truly matters will be forgotten no longer. Hear these words. You will never be ignored again. Your voice will define our destiny, and your love will forever guide us. Together, we strong, we proud, we safe. And yes, together, we great. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabe.
Thank
I
you,
think
Gabe.
it's important to remember that, he said, fear fails to accept blame, and blame free, we are doomed for death. I think we do have to speak up, stand up, and take and accept ownership and responsibility for our actions or inactions. I think that's a movement and an important piece to remember, Terry.
Yes, yes. And you know what? I really was moved by those words. And I think the power that Gabe speaks has always moved me. So I do want to thank Gabe for joining us today twice to bless us with his poetry. So next we're gonna go into some music, aren't we, Leslie? I think that's what we have.
I think so. I think you said that you have a really special recording, perhaps even a surprise visit from a Penn State alum, Shalom Dubo. Now, I heard that she is Seattle-born, a Nigerian American who prides herself on making music for wandering minds that yearn to focus. She said she's very artistic. And I think she mentioned that she's been writing songs since she was like 10 years old, and she learned to play the guitar. And she learned actually to play the guitar at Penn State during her first year. And she's not stopped producing music since. So please tell me what selection you have chosen for her.
Well, first of all, I am wearing a suit today, but I do own a Shalom Dubo's hoodie that I do wear. So I just want to point that out. But so I did choose a couple of songs, and then I'm going to play two songs, and I'm going to bring her in live. She is waiting backstage. But the first one, I want her to introduce herself. So and also I want us to, well, can I just play it?
Yeah.
There we go.
Hello. My name is Shalom Dubo. I'm here in DC, and I'm so hyped to be performing for this year's March on Washington commemoration. So today, I'm so hyped because I'm not doing this alone. I have some dope people here playing with me today. So first up, this is Kel. Kel is playing guitar today. Say what's up. And that's Hayes on drums. Boom. So yeah, how we're gonna be running this is we're gonna have a series of songs for you. We have Homecoming by Kanye West, and the rest are all originals by myself. So if you like it, go check it out. We'll put it somewhere in the video. But yeah, I'm Shalom Dubo. This is me performing for Penn State's March on Washington commemoration. And yeah, let's do it. I wasn't on my shit, admitted I'm still tryna hop on it. Sirens got me on the unsmooth seas. I got no right to ask to drive the boat. And I ain't got a lot to give, but my patience and a peaceful view of mind. I usually would not say this, but you got me out singing like I'm more too thick, alright. And the flow is outrageous. When they play my shit, it sounds like I made this for life. Persistence is all I need. Quality friends are all I need, and then a girl is going far. And it's outrageous. When they play my shit, it sounds like I made this for life. Persistence is all I need. Quality friends are all I need, and then a girl is going, and I need this, and I want this, and I'm trying, and I will try. Till my trials and tribulations, they are rising, but I'm grinding. No, and I need this, and I want this, and I'm trying, and I will try. Till my trials and tribulations, they are rising, but I'm grinding. Oh no. Wanna pop off in the city like I'm Diddy. Wanna ride around and make sense like I'm fitted. Wanna be the reason that you stopped in the zone, and I wanna be the reason that you pop like you're on. Wanna pop off in the city like I'm Diddy. Ride around and make sense like I'm fitty. Wanna be the reason that you pop in the zone, and I wanna be the reason that you show what you're on. I wasn't on my shit, admitted I'm still tryna hop on it. Sirens know me on the unsmooth seas. I got no right to ask to drive the boat. And I ain't got a lot to give, but my patience and a peaceful view of mine. I usually would not say this, but you got me here singing like I'm more too thick, alright. And the flow is outrageous. When they play my shit, it sounds like I made it for life. Persistence is all I need. Quality friends are all I need, and a girl is going far. And it's outrageous. When they play my stuff, it sounds like I made this for life. Persistence is all I need. Quality friends are all I need, and then a girl is going far. Da da da. Da da da. Da da da. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Da da da. Na 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 na. Da da da. Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
All right, and I did say one more, and then I'm going to play one more of the songs, and then I'm going to bring Shalom in. So, with that said,
Yeah, I see you now, I see you now. I feel so proud when I look at you, and I don't see gray. Yeah, I see you now, I see you now. I feel so proud when I look at you, baby. Ooh, I said I don't see gray. Ooh, I got to tell, I got to show, you got to know that for every battle that we lost, we learned to fight a better way. Ooh, I got to tell, I got to show, you got to know. All these angels by my side, tell me what dragons I can't slay. Yeah, I see you now, I see you now. I feel so proud when I look at you, and I don't see gray. Yeah, I see you now, I see you now. I feel so proud when I look at you, baby. Ooh, I said I don't see gray. Oh, you look so nice. When I look into the future, I could nearly go blind. Self-love popping and it's all for you, cause you really can't be bothered by the things they do. Oh, it feels so right. No more darkness left, oh, it feels so nice. Used to be so heavy, now I feel so right. I will feel alright when we coast and round the city like a city all mine. This area code where I'm losing my mind, but I bring you back and I seem to find it at every corner. Always with my mind, every little figure that shows some. Oh, it looks so nice. When I look into the future, I could nearly go blind. Self-love popping and it's all for you, cause you really can't be bothered by the things. Oh, it feels so right. No more darkness left, though it feels so nice. Used to be so heavy, now it feels so right. And I feel alright when we close that. Round the city like a city all night. This area code where I've lost my mind, but I bring you back and I seem to find it at every corner. Always in my mind. Never even figured out it's your style. Lord have mercy. Hey, Lord have mercy. Hey, Lord have. Ooh, oh, it looks so nice. When I look into the future, I could nearly go blind. Self-love popping and it's all for you. Really can't be bothered by the things they do. Oh, no, 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 it feels so right. Used to be so heavy, now I feel so light. Used to be so heavy, now I feel so light. I will feel alright when we coast and grind. Round the city like it's really all mine. In this area code where I'm losing my mind, but I bring you back and I seem to find it at every corner. Movies with my mama. Every hidden figure gotta show self out.
wonderful, wonderful. And I have you muted, Leslie, so hold on one second. There you go. Welcome back. Can you hear me?
All right. I'm here with you, smiling. I hear Shalom, and she's got an eclectic approach to her songwriting,
Well,
so
you
that's
know what?
kind
It's
of
also
exciting.
exciting. She is waiting to join us live. So, Shalom, welcome to the party here.
Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon.
Welcome, welcome.
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 Where are you
Doing
today,
great,
Shalom?
doing well. How are you doing?
Good.
Oh, where am I? I'm in DC. I'm in the nation's capital. So yeah.
All right. Well, Shalom, let me ask you a quick question. And I just did a little echo there, but tell me a little bit about your music. And sort of when you look at today's environment and you're writing your music, tell me what are some things that's going through your mind?
That's a really good question. So for me, like Leslie said, I have a very eclectic approach. Basically for me is that I term it as a confluence, as I'm a confluence of a lot of places. So I'm Nigerian, I'm American, I have a lot of viewpoints. And so it's more so I see music as a process of releasing, right? As opposed to like when people come into it and they're like, I have this purpose and this, there's always intention, but more so for me is that I see it as a process of releasing. And so one of my biggest things is that I think being able to create music in this time is a huge freedom that's been granted on me because of every artist that's come before. So my music itself, in regards to what I write, I say it's like a decoding of these thoughts, right, that I have. And so sometimes it takes a lot of time for people to understand, also because it takes a lot of time for me to share what I'm speaking about. But when it comes to my music, the main theme is that as I grow and as I go up, my thing is just to understand that freedom that I have and really step into it and create music. And so for me, it's just where I'm getting to now with my life is how do I really just express freedom by making music and just, yeah. Right.
Well, it's interesting because music has always been part of the revolution, right? It's always been part of the, in a way, its own march, right? So I guess looking at today's environment, 2020, what inspirations has come to you recently?
Wow, that's something. So like this past week, yesterday, 2 days ago, the NBA actually, the teams, not the NBA, but the teams, right? They didn't go on the court. And it's crazy because earlier on in the summer, an athlete had written and he said, sports are a distraction, right? And at that point, I basically had to understand and see that art is a fuel. So like sports is a distraction and there are many different things that are a distraction, but music and art is actually a fuel. And it fuels that revolution that you're speaking of. Every time we look down the line, you see artists, you see them with activists, right? You see actors, you see them with activists because art is a fuel. So for me, it's been during this whole point, especially in June, I had to take a lot of time because I could feel it. I could feel like even being in DC, like the helicopters when they were going there were 2 nights and it was like those are the most tumultuous nights, but I could feel it and I had to understand more that art is a fuel. So it's up to the artist to create whatever that is. If you're speaking like an artist like No Name who speaks directly, or if you're an artist like me who just is like, I'm going to express freely, it's to create. And so in this period, I've been learning more and more like how to go into myself, find out myself, decode the things about myself that will allow me to speak. And so directly from this period, there's a lot of inspiration, but it's nothing new. This is stuff that's been happening, right? It's just that now we have the documentation instantly. And so for me, the inspiration it's there. There's so many things, but it's nothing new. More so what I think is new is that understanding this is an endurance game and understanding that I need to be successful as an artist and as an individual so that way I'm a fuel to the movement, a fuel to the people around me who are on the front lines, who are the activists, who are people who are moving every day. So yeah.
One of my last
Well, I would say that you're inspiring lots of people.
Me too.
I hear you've got some over 3 million streams on Spotify.
Yes.
Well, let me ask you one more question. You talked about being fueled. What artists from the past have fueled your progression?
Artists from the past who have fueled my progression. I would say a lot of like Nigerian artists, I've started reading a lot about Bob Marley recently, more so learning how a person can be a movement, right? But then how a person can also be used for other people's agendas, right? And how just that can be a problem in its own, but how a person can really just be a symbol, So Bob Marley, more so his story, like his music, I love his music, but more so his story and his icon. An artist named Two-Face from Nigeria. He's in that time that after Bob Marley had come up, Two-Face was a young kid. And one of the things with Bob Marley is that his music resonated with people in third world and people it's called suffer music, right? And so Nigeria in Lagos, there's this young artist comes up called Two-Face, and he really takes that sound and he speaks and you hear it. And so Two-Face is a really, really deep one for me because I was listening to him as a kid. An artist I really like is just now he's kind of like, he actually started goofing when I was in Penn State, and it was kind of sad because I had to see all my friends like get heartbroken. And I'm like, I stay away from worshiping artists or people in general. So if somebody does something awful, because I guess to backtrack, as artists, because we put out great stuff, people often forget that human beings put out great stuff and they put out trash too sometimes, you know? So, but one of my big inspirations is Kanye West because of his icon and the way he used to speak. But now it's kind of like, okay, so I have to take that out of my bio. But Sade, I really love Sade because she's a force, but she's like she's a force, but she does it so nicely, you know? And so it's like that. And then another artist story who I've been like just trying to learn more about is Nina Simone. And so, yeah.
I was hoping you mentioned her now. I was hoping you mentioned that's because I love Nina Simone. Well, you know what? I think we're blessed today because Shalom, you want to actually do a live piece called Mountaintops that you actually wrote, correct?
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that said, I'm going to give you the stage and please take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to come a bit closer. I'm thankful for the ones who came before. I'm thankful for the ones who walked before, so I could fly today. For the things I get to see, for all the things I get to say, and the way I get to play. For the stunner that I be, or the stunner that I am, the stunner with a plan. That you stuck it to the man, that you stuck it to the man, and that you always the man. Thankful for the ones who came before, the ones who walked before, so I could fly today. That you stood your ground. Thankful that you kept head up and that you stayed sat down. For the ones who came before, for the ones who walked before, so I could fly today. I will see you on the mountaintops, yeah. Everything is right and nothing is rough for the best of us. I will see you high up in the skies, saying, baby, we made it. Oh, can you believe we made it? I will see you on the mountaintops, yeah. Everything is right and nothing's rough for the best of us. Hope I see you high up in the sky, saying, baby, we made it. Can you believe we made it? Hope you get the chance to live out all your dreams. Hope you get all that you want, and that is all you thought it'd be. Hope that when the struggles come, you'll fight. Know it's fine to lose a battle when you're trying to win the war. I will see you on the mountaintops. Everything is right and nothing's rough for the best of us. Hope I see you high up in the skies, saying, baby, we made it. Can you believe we made it? I will see you on the mountaintops. Everything is nice and nothing's rough for the best of us. Hope I see you high up in the skies, saying, baby, we made it. Can you believe we made it? Thankful for the ones who came before. I'm thankful for the ones who walked before, so I could fly today. That you stood your ground. I'm thankful that you kept head up and that you stayed sat down. For the ones who came before, the ones who walked before, so I could fly today. Thank you.
you.
Shalom.
Shalom.
Thank you so much for blessing us with your presence. Everyone, check Shalom out online. Shalom, we'll probably post your stuff on the Watch Party website as well. So thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Lisa. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Terry. Thank you so much. And this has been a wonderful event. So thank you for keeping it going in this time, because we need this now more than ever. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today.
Bye-bye.
Hey,
Wow,
Terry, next, I think we have two reflections from two of our local organizations on campus. We have the Forum on Black Affairs, our newly elected president and veteran of the Air Force, Andre Colbreth. And I think, hopefully, we'll have time in January to host that annual banquet this year. Any bets, Terry?
Yeah, I'll
I
place
don't
my
know if the
bet.
pandemic's
I'll
going to
place
let
my
us,
bet,
but
all
we'll
right.
see, because we have over 1,000 people every day. We have
Well,
over 1,000 people every year. I don't know if we'll be able to do it, but we'll see.
maybe we could do a virtual one, just like
And
this.
then after Andre, following him will be our longtime resident, Carol Eicher, who is also the founder and president of the Community Diversity Group. And we are hopeful that both of these organizations will be able to continue their efforts for social justice and equity.
Absolutely.
Hello, my name is Andre Colbreth, and I'm the president of the Forum on Black Affairs at the Pennsylvania State University. And we are proud to be a supporter of the commemoration of the 1963 March on Washington for Freedom and Jobs. Now more than ever, the march is needed to enhance our understanding of economic injustice and the ever-plaguing racial inequalities that plague our system and society. With the current issues of food insecurity, housing insecurity, unemployment, police brutality, and racial injustice happening all around the world, the march is needed now more than ever.
Yes.
It is in this tradition that FOBA forges forward. We are committed to advocating and amplifying issues that surround racial and economic justice. Dr. Martin Luther King stated in his I Have a Dream speech that we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. And it is those words that inspire us today to continue to do the work that we do. Thank you to the Commemoration Committee for allowing us to be a part of this occasion.
All right, and for our CDG, let me bring it up as well.
Hi, I'm Carol Eicher, and I'm the president and co-founder of the Community Diversity Group of Center County. I am so excited that we are a part of the commemoration of March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. envisioned and worked tirelessly to create a world that was inclusive and equitable, the beloved community. The crowd of 250,000 who marched on Washington on August 28, 1963, included men and women of diverse racial, ethnic, and religious backgrounds, all working towards a common goal of jobs and equality. Over 15 years ago, Community Diversity Group was formed to achieve a similar goal, working with employers to increase diversity in employment and making State College a community where all people feel welcome. I am heartened that Community Diversity Group is thriving. With a modest but enthusiastic membership and much community support, we have presented diversity conferences with over 200 participants, hosted conversations featuring diverse community groups, co-hosted cultural empowerment lunches for women, and organized multicultural fairs and interspiritual holiday celebrations. We have collaborated with a variety of organizations and institutions to achieve our goals. With every conversation, conference, and celebration, Community Diversity Group has brought the Center County community closer together to cultivate a more inclusive and engaged community. We carry on Dr. King's legacy because we know our community is stronger and more vibrant when everyone is included and celebrated.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I think next we have another one of our community partners, Mlk Commemoration and friends. She always shows up at our Art Fest and other wonderful programs. I think she sent us a message and a song reminding us of plowing through the struggle. Much like the Freedom Riders rode buses through the segregated South and nearly died, blues seems so very fitting for this next segment.
Indeed. And without that, Molly.
Freight train, gone so fast. Freight train, gone at last. Please don't tell what train I'm on, so they won't know where I'm gone. Freight train, coming around the bend. Freight train, gone again. One of these days, turn this train around and go back to my hometown. I'd like to be, one more town I'd love to see, to watch those old Blue Ridge Mountains climb as I ride old number 9. When I die, please bury me deep down at the end of Bleecker Street, so I can hear old number 9 as she goes rolling by. Freight train, gone so fast. Freight train, gone at last. Please don't tell what train I'm on, so they won't know where I'm gone.
Oh, I am muted. There we go. Thank you so much, Molly. That is wonderful. See, I mute myself during the songs because I don't want my, paper shuffling to get in the way. So, no, we couldn't really have this event and not talk about the passing of the legendary John Lewis. And when we look at today's and what we're trying to celebrate, it calls back to the thoughts of the call to march on Washington, and folks like John Lewis, the NAACP, really left that legacy. So here's a little clip that we want to share with you, and I want to thank you, Leslie, as well for taking and organizing this. So with that said,
It's a great clip, and it's A. Philip Randolph and John Lewis, along with other civil rights groups like the NAACP, who took and organized actions to make the march possible. And it was transformative to our nation. So I think it's important that we spend the next 3 or 4 minutes watching.
Yes, and so with that, wake up, America.
200,000 Negroes and whites marched on Washington, demanding passage of President Kennedy's Civil Rights Bill, most far-reaching of its kind in 100 years. And this, during the 100th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln.
Freedom! Oh, freedom! Freedom! The March on Washington was the idea of A. Philip Randolph, this Dean of Black Leadership, a man who had been wanting to see a march on Washington since the days of Roosevelt. President Kennedy invited a group of us to the White House to meet with him. Kennedy didn't like the idea. He said, if you bring all these people to Washington, won't there be violence and chaos and disorder? Mr. Randolph responded in his baritone voice and said, Mr. President, this will be an orderly, peaceful, nonviolent protest. And we started organizing. We were able to bring more than 250,000 people to march on Washington. And we all had to prepare a speech. I was very young, 23 years old, had all of my hair and a few pounds lighter.
I have the pleasure to present to this.
When A. Philip Randolph said, I now present to you young John Lewis, the national chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee.
Brother John Lewis.
I looked to my right. I saw hundreds and hundreds of young who had been involved during the early days. Looked straight ahead. I saw this sea of humanity. Then I looked to the left. I saw young black men and young white men up in the trees, trying to get a better view. And then I said to myself, well, this is it. And I looked straight ahead again. And something said to me, go for it. And I opened my mouth and I started speaking.
We march today for jobs and freedom. But we have nothing to be proud of. Hundreds and thousands of our brothers are not here, for they're receiving starvation wages or no wages at all. Those who have said be patient and wait, we must say that we cannot be patient. We do not want our freedom gradually, but we want to be free now. The time will come when we will not confine our marching to Washington. We will march through the South, through the streets of Jackson, through the streets of Danville, through the streets of Cambridge, through the streets of Birmingham. We must say, wake up, America, wake up, for we cannot stop, and we will not and cannot be patient.
I think that's a really important clip, Terry. When we think about that's 1963, but this is 2020, and many of the demands that were made in 1963, we are still fighting for today. They wanted the passage of civil rights legislation. We got it. We have some public accommodations and decent housing. We have it. But these are important things. Elimination of school segregation. Even now, it feels like it's by choice, a segregated America, but it's not intentional. We have to do better. There's still work to be done. They were fighting for a $2 an hour minimum wage nationwide.
Right.
$2 an hour, and they couldn't get that passed. So I'm just saying, when we think about the enforcement of the 14th Amendment, Constitution, and all of those wonderful things, we still have these demands that need to be met today and realized. Yeah. So it's also a time for us, my second clip, because I always think it's better than listening to me, but to be there to hear it by somebody else having it said. But it is the time to remember the price that we all paid to have the right to vote. And right now it's hanging in the balance again to be stolen. So let's take 5 minutes just to listen to John Lewis about the frustration of being denied the right to vote that led to the 3 marches, with this notable march from Selma to Montgomery.
I felt then, and I feel today, that the vote is precious. It's almost sacred. It is the most powerful, nonviolent instrument or tool that we have in a democratic society. But for many years, people of color could not register to vote, especially in the 11 states of the old Confederacy. People stood in unmovable lines. People were beaten. People were murdered for attempting to register or to encourage others to register. In one little county called Lowndes County, the county was more than 80% African American, just outside of Montgomery, Alabama. There was not a single registered African American voter in the county. After President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act in July 1964, we said to him, in effect, Mr. President, we need a Voting Rights Act. He said, I just signed the Civil Rights Act. We don't have the votes in the Congress to get a Voting Rights Act. If you want it, make me do it. There was a protest in Perry County, Alabama. A young man was shot and murdered. Because of what happened to him, we made a decision to attempt to march from Selma to Montgomery.
We have a legal and constitutional right to march from Selma to Montgomery.
And someone from Dr. King's organization said, John, we want you to march with us. We want you to lead this march with Jose Williams from Dr. King's organization. We left church. We conducted a nonviolent workshop in a courtyard.
We want some black faces down on Dexter Avenue in Montgomery at that Capitol.
And then we lined up in twos to walk from Selma to Montgomery.
We're marching today to dramatize to the nation, dramatize to the world, that hundreds and thousands of Negro citizens of Alabama, but particularly here in the Blight Belt area, denied the right to vote.
I was wearing a backpack before it became fashionable to wear backpacks. I thought I was going to get arrested and go to jail, so in this backpack, I wanted to have something to eat. I had 1 apple and 1 orange. I had 2 books. I had toothpaste and a toothbrush. But we understood while we were walking through the streets of Selma that the sheriff of Selma and Dallas County had requested that all white men over the age of 21 to come down to the courthouse that Saturday night to be deputized, to become part of his posse. We just kept walking. We come to the highest point on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Down below, we see a sea of blue, Alabama State Troopers. We saw all of this water down below in the Alabama River. Jose Williams said to me, John, can you swim? I said, no. Jose, what about you? He said, a little. I said, well, that's too much water in this river for us to jump. We must go straight ahead. A man by the name of John Cloud identified himself and said, I'm Major John Cloud of the Alabama State Troopers.
It's detrimental to your safety to continue this march, and I'm paying attention to
This is an unlawful march, will not be allowed to continue.
You are ordered to disperse, go home, or go to your church.
Disperse and return to your homes or to your church. I said, Major, may I have a word? He said, there will be no word. You saw these men putting on their gas masks. He said, troopers advance.
Troopers here, advance.
They came toward us, beating us with nightsticks, trampling us with horses, releasing tear gas. I was the first person to be hit. I was hit in the head by a state trooper with a nightstick. I thought I saw death. I thought I was going to die on that bridge. I thought it was my last nonviolent protest. And all these many years later, I don't recall how I made it back across that bridge to the church. I do recall being in the church. They asked me to say something to the audience. And I stood up and said something like, I don't understand it. How President Johnson can send troops to Vietnam and cannot send troops to Selma, Alabama to protect people who only desires to register to vote.
Wow. And you know, indeed, the vote is our most powerful democratic tool. Even President Lyndon B. Johnson comes to acknowledge the significance of both marching and voting later in the same video. He states, their cause must be our cause too. We must overcome the crippling legacy of bigotry and injustice. Beautiful.
Yes, indeed. That's true. The evolution of the struggle, the past, and the present is still real, and we're bearing the brunt of it today. 250,000 people participated in that historic march on Washington in 1963, and it debuted Dr. King's iconic speech, which everybody knows, I Have a Dream. And it was broadcast live by television stations across the country. That 17-minute speech endured more than 57 years and has influenced billions of people.
Wow. Well, we have some words from our president in State College, our State College NAAC president, Lorraine Jones. And so I want to share her message with us. And with that said,
Hi, my name is Lorraine Jones, and it is my pleasure to be here with you today on behalf of the State College NAACP. Now more than ever, we must secure our democratic processes and our democratic right to vote. We also must work towards educational equity for each and every child in our nation. We also must make sure that our legal system works, and it works for every individual regardless of their racial background. These were things and issues that were very passionate in 1963 and relevant, and they're just as passionate and relevant today. As we continue to work collectively around the nation on these issues, let's keep them at the forefront. And remember, when we fight, we win.
Indeed, we continue to fight. And each of our struggles for social justice and equity and inclusion make a difference. And they yield their own victory. Some are small, some are great. You know,
and some are contagious.
And we hope that they are, right? These little tiny moments should become big movements. I agree. And we had one, right? We struggled for a long time in our school district, as we heard from Dr. Barbara Farmer.
Right.
And we know that currently there's a lack of diversity in both leadership and the student body. But we made a small victory in 2018. We reached a milestone here in State College when we created the position and hired someone for the position of the director for equity and inclusion in the State College School District. So let's welcome remarks from Dr. Syria Chatters.
Hello, my name is Dr. Syria Chatters, and I am the Director of Equity and Inclusivity for State College Area School District. I was honored to have the opportunity to say a few words regarding the role of education and students in civil rights movements. I want to start my remarks with a key phrase that I found in a Teaching Tolerance article, which is an organization that we use quite often and helps to embed our social studies standards and the work that we are doing across our curriculum. The phrase indicates that when we encourage our students to consider how power and privilege affect them, we must also anticipate that they're going to want to do something about the injustices they see. This is a key phrase that underlines the motivation behind students' involvement in civil rights movements over the last few centuries. It's key to note that although there are certain decades that have been marked as moments in time in which civil rights made significant leaps forward, that children and youth across time have been parts of the civil rights movements that have helped to propel us forward. In 1963, a student group called the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was key in organizing many of the key events that we note to be integral in the civil rights movement today. John Lewis was a key member of that organization. SNCC was part of the Freedom Rides. They were key in the lunch counter protests, as well as key roles in leading the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, which was the march from Selma to Birmingham, and also helped to organize the March on Washington, in which John Lewis spoke alongside Dr. Martin Luther King. It is also important to note that students today are continuing to be integral members of civil rights movements across the country, advocating for Black Lives Matter, advocating for justice, advocating for the reform of police departments across the United States, as well as reforms of systems to help to root out institutional racism. Students right here in State College, Pennsylvania, have also protested as early as this past summer in joining the movements that are occurring across the globe. One of the key roles of education is to ensure that we are teaching students history in the way that it happened. However, one of the important parts that we must remember is that as we are teaching students about their history and teaching students about their present, that they are going to be able to connect the dots and note that what we are indicating happened in the past is also currently happening in the present, which indicates that it will be a key factor in our future. One of the key statements and quotes of Martin Luther King is that hope is the enemy of injustice. Many of us see our youth as our hope for the future. My key hope is that as we continue to educate our youth, that they will continue to join civil rights movements and help to be integral players in propelling us forward. If hope is the enemy of injustice, then our youth are definitely our light for the future. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to say a few remarks, and I hope that today, on this day commemorating the March on Washington, that we continue to join hands and move forward as we work toward fighting for justice. Thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Chatters. So, you know, speaking of protests and rallies and marches, the State College community has been really active amongst all ages and making their voices heard surrounding the topics of racial injustice and police brutality. Even our high school students, they were so empowered that they made their demands known to the school board. So this song goes out to them. It's actually a song that I do love. It's called Rise. It's performed by our own Miss Melanie. Miss Melanie is a local band that focuses on some funk, some soul, some danceable tunes. And also she's one of the founding members of the 320 Coalition. So I'm so honored to have Melanie share her art with us and take and be a part of this observance. Brian Clary is on guitar, Chris Cohn on the drums, and Jeff Beck on the bass. So with that said, I would love to bring on Miss Melanie.
Rise up.
Looking down there, tired, living life on a merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I
I love that
Wonderful.
song, Rise Up. I really
Beautiful.
do. I love to hear it. So thank you, Melanie. It's a great lead-in for the next clip, too. I have one more clip to show that speaks to the 1965 visit from Dr. King at Penn State and the creation of the MLK Plaza. So let's hear from Jackie Esposito and Dr. Anne Marie Mingo.
In January of 1965, when Martin Luther King came to State College was a quiet, sleepy Pennsylvania town. It had not been as active in social issues as it would become in later years. And so it would have been very traditional Pennsylvania.
One of the things that a lot of people don't realize about Dr. King is that he did really travel extensively. In one of the interviews that he did with Alex Haley, he talks about how over 325,000 miles were traveled per year by Dr. King. And he gave a roughly 450 speeches per year. So the fact that Penn State was one of those many speeches that he decided to give throughout the year does say a lot, because we understand the geographical constraints of State College. Yes, he did speak in Philadelphia. Yes, he did speak in other areas of the state, but to make it here to State College meant that it was very intentional for him. And so there was a message that he wanted this State College and this Penn State community to hear about the future of integration. And so within his speech, he talks about the history of the nation with slavery. He talks about the way that we have been able to move forward at that point up to 1965 in eradicating some of the really bad problems of the nation, but we still had a long way to go.
We will not tolerate agitators attempting to orchestrate.
One of the other great things that Dr. King talks about in the speech that he was giving here at Penn State was something that's very relevant to what we're seeing in the media today around the 50th anniversary of the march from Selma. That march would later take place in March of 1965. So 2 months prior, King was already talking with the students here at Penn State about what was to come. And it was that march from Selma to Montgomery that helped to really spark what became the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
He clearly gets an audience. He clearly understands how to reach an audience, and he definitely got the audience at Rec Hall. If you can imagine 8,000 people in Rec Hall, and you could hear a pin drop. 8,000 people in Rec Hall, half of them by the end of his speech crying. You know, you couldn't imagine what that would be like in 2015. You know, 50 years later, who could come to Penn State and have that same effect?
Fantastic. Yeah, that's
I do love that bit of history.
It is. It's nice to know that we live in a community too, in which we know that MLK impacted this community personally. You know, and as many times as I've been in Rec Hall, every time I walk through there, I do think about that. You know, so that is wonderful. All right,
Who's
Leslie,
up
what do we have
next?
next? That's why
I was
I asked
asking you. I think Gary requested another one from Molly Countermine and Friends.
Yes, indeed. Molly is up next. And so with that said, this song is called Shelter, and I want to have Molly take it away. So you can't see me backstage, but I was jamming to that one. Okay, I was actually getting down to that one. And what's interesting. As we are approached, we went past the 4 o'clock hour, Leslie, because we just got into it, and we were just really going at it. But we are talking now about the evolution, right? It is the evolution of the struggle, And so, we heard from our young folks. We heard from the NAAC president. We heard from Dr. Chatters, and I think that song really sets the tone, So, and also I think it sets the tone for our brother who's coming on next, who's going to join us.
I do think so. I think there's a historical thing we're thinking about. That whole black and white montage, but Molly's very much current in 2020, is used as a reflection of the 1963 era too. It was all filmed in color, and yet we have black and white history to make us think it's in our past. So it's very interesting how things are recorded or what people fail to record on the timeline of our own history. And so that's part of the struggle right now that we think about. It took many years for even Penn State to record the Black Chronicles that we all know now, the African American Chronicles, which are online. And it was reported that sometime after 1965, in between 65 and 70, there were 2 student-led protests on campus at the same time, 2 different campuses at Penn State. And in support of the Black Student Union and the Black Student League, more than 70 students had sealed off the Shields building for several hours. They disrupted classes. They voiced their demands too. And they launched an effort for change. So the Black Student Orientation Program, who knew, right? They launched that. They tried to get a Black Student Lounge and several other initiatives that helped them to succeed. Eventually, they founded the Black Student Caucus in 1971 for increasing minority recruitment. The organization also continues to provide a variety of social and educational and cultural programming, even here today at Penn State. So I think it's only fitting that our next guest flash back and talk to us.
Yes, indeed. And by the way, he is sort of the guy behind the scenes of this event, and he's been jamming with me. I can see his motions because I'm the host. He's been jamming the whole time. So with that said, brother Gary Abdullah, how are you doing, sir?
It is our legendary Gary Abdullah, and a member of the MLK Plaza Committee and a Penn State alum who has a few tales to tell us of the 1970s when he was a student.
I got tales to tell. Can you hear me?
Yes, take it away, Gary.
Wonderful. Hey, you guys are doing a wonderful job. Thank you so much for picking up the ball and running with it. I mean, the production. I'm enjoying this. I am enjoying my caramel apple tea sitting here at home, and it is a public service. I appreciate what you're doing.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
And I get to dance.
That last one got me dancing too.
Oh man. and
you in the blues.
Strangely enough, it is really appropriate. Well, one of the things you were just talking about was in 69 and 70 and that sort of thing. I think even in addition to the Shields building, they took over the natatorium as well. Because I got here in like the fall of 70, and the natatorium was still kind of disheveled, shall we say. They were still doing repairs on it. And the song talks about "Give me shelter," and it says "war, children." It was war. It was serious. It was to back up a little bit. When I got here, I joined the Black Student Union, and then we formed the Black Caucus and all that sort of thing. I was one of the inaugural officers of the Black Caucus, and the process was one of students bringing to the university and to the society in general, status quo, a lot of challenges, a lot of new ideas. Like, I think Penn State needs a Black Studies program. Because at that time there was no Black Studies, there was no Women's Studies, there was no gay, lesbian, there was none of that. There was no ADA. All of those things came out of the civil rights struggle that came to campus in 68, 69. And so I remember, talking to students, I remember talking to faculty, and the faculty would stand you up as a student in their class in the forum in front of like 300 or 400 other students and say they didn't want to hear about it. As a faculty person at Penn State, what you were presenting did not belong at their university, and neither did you. I've heard it said. And so it was a time of challenge, you know. It was a time of resistance, you know. And so when we look at all these things, you know, when we look at the many aspects of diversity that are just taken for granted at Penn State, one of the things you got to know is that when you bring protest, when you bring a march for jobs and freedom to an institution, there's going to be resistance. There's going to be kickback. That's one of the reasons I'm really glad that you guys and we all have made such an effort to incorporate, you know, the young people. Because when I got here, I was 17 years old, and this place was like a big forest to me. I was from West Philadelphia, and so I didn't do big trees and stuff like that. I didn't do a whole lot of grass, you know. And I also was not used to the idea of just coming to the institution and saying, these are changes that need to be made, and having the institution say, you know, we can tell you where to get off, you know, take your bus and go home. But our youth was an asset. It was a weapon. We were able to really, you know, do a lot of things in terms of presenting new ideas. And what we learned was you really just had to just persist, you know. I've talked to like university administrators and things like that 10, 15 years later, that sort of thing. And they explained that as in 1971, we were presenting demands. One of their stated objectives was just, they were going to wait you out. They were like, you know, the premise was, it's spring semester. If all we got to do is hang in until everybody goes home, they're students. By September, they're dumb, they'll forget. And so it becomes the challenge for us is to be dedicated enough to the cause to say, yes, I know, we know the game, we know how you're playing. These are still issues that need to be addressed.
Yes. And we want change now.
Yeah, yes. You know, and not be sucked in and tricked into doing the dumb things. You know, there was some violence. You know, there were fights and things like that. But there were no riots. There was organized protest. And the fact that there were no riots meant that the police could not send you home or to rob you. And you were able to continue to be there, to continue to present your issues. And I think the process really is one of the vigor of youth and the wisdom of knowing what the game looks like and how you have to play it. You know, I hear people talking about, you know, just advocating violence, and I know how that's going to end. I mean, we know how that sort of thing has ended for a couple hundred years now. So it's so important that as we approach the cause and as we approach the effort, that we work together. You know, the old people have something, the geezers got something to share, the young kids have something to share, and we all have something to do.
Absolutely.
That's very true. I think it was Daryl Daisy, who was part of class of 1983, who was given credit for getting the Black Alumni Association to champion and document our comprehensive account of the African American experience at Penn State. And so we're grateful that somebody was able to get at least some of that in the last 110 years to show our rich contributions, the struggles that we went through to make change, and the successes of the African American Penn Staters, right, that have been part of the chronicle and the history of Penn State. And I encourage our audience and our viewers to check it out on Penn State website.
I have talked to people who were present when King spoke at Rec Hall, and Donna Queenie is a good friend of mine, and she talks about how she was first or second row, how and as Jacqueline Esposito was saying, there were a lot of tears in the audience as people were just convicted by what he was talking about. But to talk about the longevity, she at the time, or rather many years later, was one of the people who, as a part of State College Area School Districts, the school board, was one of the advocates for changes within the school district, and a lot of other things that had to do with diversity within the structure of Penn State. And it comes out of how she was impacted that night in the 1960s. You know, it redounded to the 1970s and the 1980s and that sort of thing. And so there are people, hopefully, who are being impacted now, who are going to be to take that impact and turn it into the fight, turn it into change.
Well, you know what, Brother Gary,
Excellent.
Abdullah, I love that. And you know what, you said the right word, change, you know, because I think that's actually leads to our next segment here too. We one of my favorite songs, I've even written a version of it on the piano. I haven't played it in years, but one day, right? One day.
All right.
But my dear sister Melanie did bless us with the song, and the song is, of course, titled "Change." So, with that said, Gary, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, guys.
And with that said, I wanted to bring in Miss Melanie again for her version of "Change."
I was bound by the river in a little tent, just like the river, and running ever since. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know my change don't come. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. Might not be if I knew what was out there behind the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know my change gon' come. Oh, yes it is. I go to the movie and I go downtown. Somebody keep telling me don't be hanging around. It's been a long time coming, but I know my change gon' come. Oh, yeah. I went to my doctor, and I asked him, "Doctor, could you help me, please?" He said, "Go sit down, I'd like to, but I'm not able." When I looked around, I was right back down, smelling my dignity. There have been times when I thought that I couldn't rest for long, but somehow, right now, I believe from baby carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know my change has got to come. I know my change is gonna come.
it is one of my favorite songs. It absolutely is, no lie.
We're still rocking it from 1964 from Sam Cooke.
Yes,
A change
indeed.
is going to
Yes,
come. A change does come. Sometimes
absolutely.
it's milestones and sometimes it's mountains. We have a long way to go.
Right. Well, you know what? I know we have we're looking at we're 4:32, which means we have about a half an hour left. And sort of scary as it is, the next artist that I'm going to play, and this artist will actually be on with us soon, is Dre and Lenore. Is a beautiful piece that really touched my heart. It's called Black Man. So I am going to play that piece, and you see why I love it so much.
Displaced aggression, years of oppression, hindered progression. Black man, black man. For years they told you tales, telling you heaven when it's hell, giving you jail without no bail. Black man, 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 black man. Oh, black man, oh, black man, mentally abused. Oh, you've been so misused, but your faith, please do not lose. Black man, black man, you saw your brother hanged while your hands they restrained. Then they said it would be okay. Oh, black man, oh, black man, oh, black man, oh, black man, black man, oh, black man, oh, black man, oh, black man, black man, black man, oh, black man, black man, yeah. Come back to yourselves. Let me help you to reveal. Black man, black man, black man, black man, black man, black man. Oh, stop killing yourselves. Hear me call the man in you. Black man, black man, black man, black man. Oh, black man. Brought you to a foreign land and made you build it with your hands. Knocked you down, but you still stand. Black man, oh, black man. You would jump into your grave so your soul you can save from the hell that he gave. Oh, black man, oh, black man. But we need you. Said I need you.
Yes, breathe again, and we need you to rise. Yes, we do. I look forward to hearing more
Uh,
from her. I think
I know
that's
I can't wait.
exciting.
I can't wait to talk to her live. Me and Drea spent a lot of time this summer together, so when she joins us live, it'd be good to see. So I think it's appropriate
That
that
is
we,
exciting.
yes. So I think it's appropriate now that we had a song about a black man, and our next piece is from our dear sister here in State College, Tiara Williams. Do you want to say anything about this piece, Leslie?
Tiara is a 320 Coalition member, and she has a spoken piece that she's going to share with us entitled, What If I Am a Black Woman?
What if I am a black woman? Is it a disease? Well, if it is, I sure hope it's catching. Because they need to pour it in a bottle, label it, and sprinkle it all over the people, men and women, who've ever loved or cried, worked, or died for any one of us. What if I am a black woman? Is it a crime? Arrest me. Because I am strong but gentle. I'm smart but I'm learning. I'm loving but I am hateful. And I like to work because I like to eat and feed and clothe and house me, mine and yours and everybody's, like I've been doing for the past 300 years. What if I am a black woman? Is it insane? Commit me. Because I want happiness and not tears, truth and not lies, pleasures not pain, sunshine not rain, a man and not a child. What if I am a black woman? Does it bother you that much? Because I want a man who wants me, loves me, and trusts me, respects me, and gives me everything because I give him everything black. Plus, what if I am a black woman? We are midnight brown, chestnut, honey brown, chocolate covered, big lip, big hip, big breasted, and beautiful. All at the same time. So what if I am a black woman? I've got rights the same as you. I have worked for them, died for them, lied for them, played for them, laid for them, on every plantation from Alabama to Boston and back. So what if I am a black woman? I love me, but I want you to love me too. And I am as I have always been, near you, close to you, beside you, strong, giving, and loving for over 300 years. Your black woman.
Powerful. Powerful indeed. Well, okay, so we're going to play one more song before we bring in another person live. And again, it's by my dear sister, Drea Noor. When I first heard this song, I thought it really speaks to what I think we're feeling these days. And so I really wanted to have the opportunity to play it. Leslie, did you get a chance to hear this song?
I haven't yet.
Oh,
I'm looking forward to it. Is it something that she did about Trayvon?
it is. She wrote this song after the killing of
You-
Trayvon Martin. So I
Okay.
think that it really speaks to the environment that we're in today. So with that, cry for change.
saying we become love. Can't take the light. Tell me what we gonna lose. What happened to the fight in us? I know this is the last day. There's gotta be some good love. Oh Lord, another brother shot, another mother's heart just got broken. Everybody's standing around staring like they didn't see a thing. Listen to me, ain't moving. Oh Lord, another brother shot, another mother's heart just got broken. Everybody's standing around, everybody's standing around. Tell me what we gonna do, yeah. What we gonna do, yeah. Tell me what we gonna do, yeah. Tell me what we gonna do, what we gonna do? Everybody stood around like they didn't see a thing. Tell me what we gonna do. Tell me what we gonna do. Somebody gotta make a change. No.
Woo! That,
Yes,
you
you're
know
right,
what?
Terry. That was pretty powerful.
Now you see, I mean, powerful as it is. So we do have our brother here, and I'm so glad that he's able to join us today.
You
I'll
know,
let you
I love
introduce our
that
next
because
guest, lady.
our next creative is a known actor, a writer, a professor, an activist, our beloved Charles Duma, who was also a 1963 attendee at the original March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. I tell you, what call to action will Charles bring us to from under his baobab tree? Hello, Charles. Welcome.
And Charles, unmute your phone. Unmute your
You're
microphone,
muted.
Charles.
There we go.
There you go.
Yeah. Wow, that was a powerful number. That's an amazing piece to follow. And thank you guys for having me. You're doing a great job. And Thanks for squeezing me in. It's nice to have the old folks sort of, come up and comment on it. This is really kind of wonderful stuff that you have. So thank you. What I'm going to read is in the paper today. If you miss it, you just pick up the CDT. It's from my column Under the Baobab, and it's on the anniversary of the march because I was there back with my church back when I was a teenager. So let me just read it and comment as I go along. Is that all right?
Yes.
All right. Good enough. Okay. Because of the pandemic, the 57th anniversary of the March on Washington will be celebrated virtually instead of in Mlk Plaza as it was last year. But y'all know that because we're here. It may be difficult drawing a good crowd, and one of the organizers, a young leader of Black Lives Matter, asked me, he said, Professor, how did the leaders get 250,000 people to march on Washington in 1963? I had to tell him that the leaders didn't. The people did. In 1963, our church group arrived on overnight train from Chicago, and inside the station, the police and soldiers were lined up shoulder to shoulder. Some had fixed bayonets. Now, you see, you got to understand that we were coming a couple of months after the Birmingham riots, where they had used dogs and hoses and all kinds of things to oppress our people in their demonstration. So we didn't know what to expect. As we came through the station, someone started to sing. We always sang when we got scared. Woke up this morning, my mind stayed on freedom. So frightened, we joined in. Out in the thousands of people. At that time, it was the largest demonstration ever held in the District of Columbia. There were 6 leaders of the march. A. Philip Randolph, head of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. That was the largest black union at the time. James Farmer of CORE, Congress of Racial Equality. Reverend King of SCLC. Roy Wilkins of the NAACP. Whitney Young of the Urban League. And John Lewis of SNCC, the 23-year-old radical of the 6. Now, they arrived late for the march. So with 1,000 leaders instead of 6, we walked to the Lincoln Memorial. Got tired of waiting for them. It was already a sacred place. In 1939, when the Daughters of the American Revolution denied Marian Anderson the use of the Constitution Hall because of her race, Eleanor Roosevelt arranged for her to give a concert at the Lincoln Memorial. I found a place to sit on the left edge of the reflecting pool so I could see the stage, put my feet in the cool water because they were hot and I was tired. I sat in the same place for President Obama's inauguration, but then that was January and I had to chop a hole in the ice to put my feet in. And then we broke out the fried chicken and potato salad. See, that was back in the days of segregation and discrimination. We took food with us because we weren't sure, because we were down south, where you could go into a restaurant and eat. The Big 6 spoke. Freud McKissick read Farmer's speech, and others spoke. Rabbi Joachim Prince, president of the American Jewish Congress. Walter Reuther, president of the United Auto Workers Union. Matthew Anham, head of the National Catholic Conference. Bayard Rustin, he didn't speak. He was Randolph's chief assistant, but he didn't speak because the organizers thought that he might be gay-baited. As I remember, only 2 women spoke. Daisy Bates of the Little Rock Nine said a few words, and Lena Horne, the jazz singer and activist, shouted one word. She said, "Freedom!" She was one of the people that Harry Belafonte had brought from Hollywood, along with Sidney Poitier and Marlon Brando and Paul Newman, Joanne Woodward, Diane Carroll, Ozzie Davis, Ruby Dee, and Carlton Heston. Yeah, Carlton Heston. That was his pre-NRA days. Pete Seeger, who later became our dear friend in upstate New York, performed. Marian Anderson returned to her place of triumph to sing. Gospel legend Mahalia Jackson sang "How I Got Over." Joan Baez led the crowd in several verses of "We Shall Overcome." That time, that was the Black national anthem. "Old Freedom." Odetta sang "I'm on My Way." Bob Dylan performed "When the Ship Comes In," and only a pawn in their game. Peter, Paul, and Mary sang "If I Had a Hammer," and "Blowing in the Wind." Years later, our daughter Alexandra would marry Mary Travis's nephew. During the day, word got around that W.E.B. Du Bois had died the night before. Du Bois, the first Black PhD from Harvard and the founder of the NAACP, had been the leading Black intellectual of the first half of the 20th century, Roy Wilkins asked for a moment of silence to commemorate Du Bois. The day unfolded like a church service. The blessings of the Holy Spirit just poured down like a mighty stream. There were no video screens. We couldn't see much, but we could hear everything. Reverend King was one of the last speakers. He had been we didn't know him too much, but he had been the leader of the Montgomery bus boycott back in '55 and the co-organizer of the demonstration that sprang up in Birmingham that spring. He began in the slow cadence of a Black Baptist preacher. It was late in the day. We started looking at our watches. Some of us started thinking, oh my Lord, there's a long train ride home. It had been a long day. I learned later that Mahalia Jackson, referring to an earlier speech, said, "Tell him about the dream, Martin." And then he began, "I have a dream." And he continued. By the end of his speech, those who had been sitting around standing, those who had been sitting were standing, and those who had been standing were soaring. With this faith, I returned to the South. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we're free at last. In that moment, we felt free of bigotry and despair. We were free of degradation, free of oppression, free of self-doubt. In that moment, institutional racism, which had sprung from the loins of chattel slavery, was revealed for what it was, a stillborn monster which no longer had the power to oppress us. The Ku Klux Klan and the White Citizens Councils were exposed for what they really were. Sheet-draped archaic clowns who could no more stop our freedom train than the clouds could contain the rain. The arc of the universe was truly bending toward justice. We departed as we had arrived, singing freedom songs. Sadly, we were not the only ones energized. 2 weeks later, the KKK planted a bomb in the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. 4 little girls at Sunday school were killed. Ada Mae Collins, 14, Carol Denise McNair, 11, Carol Robertson, 14, and Cynthia Diane Wesley, 14. One of those little girls was actually decapitated. 2 steps forward, but 1 step back. Stay strong, sisters and brothers. Stay strong and keep your minds stayed on freedom.
Thank you, Charles.
Brother Dumas. Yes, I read that yesterday when you sent it, and it's hearing you read it, it gives me chills.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
It really does. Thank you.
I hope.
All right, so
I was going to say that I hope all the young people that were out there listening today remember that reflection from you, and I hope that they're also inspired that amidst all of the racial injustice that they're facing today, that they can still keep their minds stayed on freedom.
Yeah.
We don't keep our minds stayed on freedom, we don't get there, do we?
No. No, as a matter of fact, that's what Brian Stevenson exhorted us to. He said we have to remain hopeful in order to be able to impact and make change at all. Yeah. If we don't believe we can, we won't.
Well, you certainly have contributed to that continued change, my brother and sister. You've done a wonderful job with this program. And thank you very much on behalf of us elders who are sitting under the baobab tree watching.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, Charles.
Thank you.
We are approaching our final hour, Leslie. And
I think we're right on time, right?
We are. And so I am honored to bring in my dear sister from New York. We have heard 2 of her songs already, and it is great to be able to talk to the artists themselves. So with that said, Drea, welcome to the State College celebration. Yes. So Drea, we had the honor of hearing 2 of your songs already that I actually picked out. So now those who don't know, Drea and I had we've been working together about now 3 months now, isn't it? Yeah. Trying to get Carrio's Little Pass out there in Buffalo, New York. And so I had the honor of meeting Drea when I was down there. And again, her music is extremely powerful. So Dre, I did have one question for you.
It is. It's fabulous.
I did have one question for you too, Dre. It's sort of, what role does music play in fighting for freedom?
That's a very loaded question. I think that I think of music as probably like the heartbeat of the revolution. I think a lot of people probably would think of music as a product of the revolution. Like there's something happening, so then you start writing songs and you sing these songs, and then you hear them at protests, or you watch music videos that reflect the times, as Nina said. But I actually think that the art that I think art is a very much it's a large part of who we are as Black people, and it is the way that we express ourselves. It is our language. It is our tool. So I like to think of music as I know for me it is how I express what it is that I'm thinking and what I'm feeling, and I think it's a very necessary instrument or weapon, if you will, for the revolution.
Absolutely. Well,
I think
I know.
that's really important. The weapon for the revolution, and I think music as our theme track has always been a part of our Black history. So I think that's really wonderful, and I think Terry was bribing you to play a little part of "Beautiful" for us on our way out.
I have a way of doing that sometimes, but I know you are by your piano. Is that correct?
I am sitting. I don't know if you could see. I'm sitting here at the piano.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'm going to turn
just a little something.
Yes, I'm going to turn the stage on to you, and
I was born by the river in a little old town, just like the river. I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know the change will come. Ooh, yes it will. Said it's been too hard living, and I'm afraid to die. I don't know what's out there. Oh, God, beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change will come. Ooh, yes, it will. No. See, I go to my brother. And I say, brother, help me please. And he winds up knocking me down. Back down on my knees. And there were times when I thought that I would last for long. But now we know we're able, oh God, yeah. Good God
long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Said, oh, yes it will. Oh, yes it will. It's been a long, 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 long time coming, yeah. But I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. Thank you.
Woo! You know what? I am
What
really
a way to
grateful
bring
to
us
you
to
for
our
this.
end. That's beautiful.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, with that said,
You're
guys, it
muted,
is.
Terry.
Oh, am I? No, I'm not. Can you hear me? You can hear me.
Yes, okay.
Okay. Yeah. So.
I got you.
Okay. So, Drea, thank you so much for your time and continue to fight the good fight as well. And I am in such definitely that really was moving. So.
Well, thank you again for having me, and thank you both for the work that you're doing. Stay strong.
Yep.
Thank you, and stay healthy in New York. We love New York.
Yes.
New York is in the house. We may be in Pennsylvania, but our hearts are in New York.
That's right. Let's go.
Absolutely.
All right.
I hope you'll enjoy the next clip. Our last closing clip is 2 minutes long, and it's just John Lewis giving us another exhortation to get into good trouble.
Mm-hmm.
If it means a march, a silent walk, a sit-in, a sit-down, or maybe signing a petition, writing a letter, or voting, we have to be engaged, all of us, as members of the human family, as citizens of this country. There are forces that want to take us back to another place. And we're saying we're not going back. We've come too far. We made too much progress to stop now or to turn around. That's why I feel it is part of my obligation, my mission or mandate, to reach as many young people as possible. The fight is not over. We have to continue to fight. And sometimes you have to fight some of the old battles over and over again for the next generation, for generation yet unborn. You too can make a contribution, and you must.
Yes, we have come too far to turn around. Some battles have to be fought over for each generation. It is our mission, our mandate for all humanity. We can make each our own contribution, and we must. Powerful reflections of a life well lived in service for racial equality, gun safety, immigration reform, fighting for dignity for all. We invite our viewers to get engaged in your local community. Many of our voices shared with you today represent clubs and organizations and coalitions and movements that you should be a part of. We encourage you to rise up and march with us. There is still work to be done.
Thank you all for watching the State College commemoration of the 57th March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Thank you to the State College Borough and the MLK Plaza for all your contributions. And there were so many people, Leslie, behind the scenes that I do want to make sure we get the chance to give them a shout out. So that includes, of course, the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Plaza Committee, like I just mentioned, Kayla Laffery from the Borough of State College, the Borough of State College Office of Communication Engagement, the State College NAACP, CNET, State College Live, and of course, Strategies for Justice.
Absolutely. And I thank you because I believe praise is what we do. And so we're thanking everybody for joining us to celebrate the 57th March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. The struggle continues. And as we go out, we're going to remember that we shall overcome.
Absolutely. And with that said, everyone enjoy this last clip and everyone have a great day.
Overcome.